if you have ever been to the biopark before, been to the zoo before. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Seems like we have a lot of people who have visited our facility. Wonderful. So we can go ahead and put our hands down. So today we are going to be talking all about adaptations. Now, is that a word that we are familiar with? You can give me a thumbs up if that's a word you've heard, thumbs down if you haven't heard it before, or you can use the chat. Okay, so I'm seeing from Miss Nilva's class that we have kind of a mixture of people who are familiar with that word. Some are not. Awesome. And then let's see here. Then with Kara, we do too. So we have a mix. So does anybody who has heard that word want to tell us what it means or what you think it means? An adaptation. And if our teachers want to use the chat box for that, we can do that way as well. Okay, so an adaptation. I see we have a student coming up. Do you want to share? Go ahead.
Yeah. An adaptation is when an animal has to get used to a new place.
Is when it has to go to a new place.
He said it's when an animal has to get used to a new place or an environment.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Our adaptations do help our animals get used to new places and environments sometimes. So an adaptation is going to be something that helps an animal survive. So I want you to put on your thinking caps. Ready? So if we are thinking about something that helps us survive, right? An adaptation that we might have might be like our nose, right? Because we use our nose to smell. We can all take a nice deep breath in through our nose. Yeah, I see those deep breaths. Nice job, guys. And our nose, if something smells stinky, do we put it in our mouth? Usually not, right? If something is stinky, we don't put it in our mouth. We don't eat it. And that's usually because things that smell bad can make us sick. And so that's an adaptation that we have to help us survive. So we have some animals that we're going to practice identifying adaptations with today. And so we're going to start with our biofacts that we have. So we have this right here. Can anyone point to where on your body a bone like this might be found? Yeah, our skulls, right? Now, this is not our skull. The skull looks very different from ours. And one of the first things we see are these big, sharp teeth. So an adaptation that this animal has to help them survive are big, sharp teeth, because this animal is going to be eating predominantly meat. And does anybody know what we call an animal that eats meat? I see some hands raised. Yeah, do you guys want to shout it out on 3? Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's going to be a carnivore. So a carnivore is an animal that predominantly eats meat. So having those big, sharp teeth are something that's going to help that animal survive. So that's one of their adaptations. So I want us to take just a minute and look at the skull and see if we notice any other adaptations. Something on this skull that might help this animal survive. I'm going to ask our teachers to put our answers into the chat box. So something on this skull that might help our animal survive. And we'll take just a minute to take a good look at that. Okay, I see someone has mentioned it's weird nose. Yeah, teeth and ears. Excellent. Large eyes. Nice job, everybody. So we've made some really good observations, which is awesome because that's what a good scientist does, is they make observations. So we can start with our nose, right? So this is from an African lion, and that nose, we say it's a little weird. So I'm gonna take off this jaw so we can get a closer look. So what we're seeing here is called the nasal cavity. It has all these intricate bones inside of here. And so that helps detect different smells, helps identify what those smells might be. So if you are an African lion, you are one of the biggest, if not the biggest predator in the African savanna. So you might be using that nose to smell maybe some prey, some animals you might want to try hunting down later, which usually means you're going to be smelling things like poop, right? Which we don't really like the smell of poop, but it tells you where an animal's been. So that's really helpful for them, that big nose. It might tell them if there are other lions that are close by that are not part of their family or their pride. And then we talked about those teeth again, that adaptation that's going to help them survive. So I want everybody to take your tongue, right? Take your tongue. I want you to stick it in the back of your mouth and feel those teeth you have in the back of your mouth there. You guys feel those? So those are our flat teeth, and those are used for chewing. Now, if we look at our lion's teeth, they have no flat teeth. So their back teeth are all sharp teeth, which means lions have really bad table manners because they can't chew their food. So we use our flat teeth to chew, and they have to rip their food into chunks and swallow it whole. Another thing you guys mentioned are their eyes. So we can see their orbital socket is right here, right in the front of their face. And they do have large eyes. And so having eyes in the front means that you like to hunt. So if your eyes are in the front of your face, that means you're not worried about someone sneaking up behind you, which if you're a predator is usually true, because lions, their only predators in the wild are humans. And so for animals like deer or rabbits, their eyes are going to be on the side of their head. So eyes on the side, run and hide. So that means you're going to be a prey animal, and they're going to be on the lookout for predators like our lions. Let's see, we had someone mention ears. Now, can we actually see the ears on this skull? No, that's right. Yeah, so since our ears are made out of cartilage, right, they're not a part of our skull, but something really cool is lions have something called an auditory bulb. And that's going to be right back here. Is that right, Mr. Chaz?
These pieces right here.
These pieces right here. So we can see these two bumps on the skull. It's called an auditory bulb. And so this is an adaptation that occurred over time. So lions, their snouts were getting shorter and shorter so they could have stronger jaw muscles. Thank you, Mr. Chaz. And we can see their jaw muscles right here. They take up all this space. This is where they were going to go. And since their noses were getting shorter, they were having a more difficult time finding food, right? Because we just talked about how they need that scent to find their food. But they started developing these auditory bulbs right here, which actually helped improve their hearing. So their noses are stronger than our noses. They're not as strong as a dog, but their ears are very, very good at hearing. We have these auditory bulbs. So now that we've practiced identifying adaptations on our lion skull, are you guys ready to meet an animal? Yeah, okay, well, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn the time over. We have one of our animal ambassadors that Mr. Chaz is gonna introduce us to, and then we are going to visit with an animal that we have on grounds here at the biopark. So I'm gonna stand up and move so Mr. Chaz can come over and introduce you all to our animal. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, Mr. Chaz.
All right. So here we have our friend Yertle. And Yertle is a box turtle. Specifically an ornate box turtle. Oops, and Yertle, you want to grab some paper towel real quick?
I can grab some paper towel.
Is using a defense mechanism where he pees on me because he doesn't like that I'm holding him. So, oh, there he goes again. Okay. All right. So, Yertle can be found all over the southern United States, all the way over to Louisiana. They like to live here. Big fan of the grasslands, prairies. So, what are some things that we might find as adaptations in a box turtle? Can anyone name anything they might know off the top of their head? And just pop those answers in the chat if you would. Yep, the shell, of course. You can see this nice strong shell on his back, which has a kind of see the ornate design here. Got these stripes on it. Very pretty. That's going to protect them from predators. And of course, they can pull their arms and their legs and their head and their tail inside that shell. And then you might notice there's a little line here on the plastron, or the bottom of the shell. This is a hinge, and that's how box turtles get their name. So when they pull everything in, oh my, they can close that front part of their plastron here, and it gives them extra protection from predators who might be try to get at their face or their arms, and it keeps them safe. Strap claw is another one. Yeah, so they have, you can see these claws here. So these turtles are excellent diggers. They're really good at burrowing in the soil and digging for worms and grubs, different food they might eat. They like to eat roots as well. So yeah, those claws are really useful for them. If you know anybody who has a pet turtle that keeps it outside, it's always a good idea to have a solid bottom on their enclosure, because they can burrow their way right under a fence and get out of there. I never see them again. Anything else? The color, that's another good one. So you notice the shell has these lines on it, but also it's a dark color. So this will blend in very well with the grasses they tend to live in, or along the side of a stream, perhaps, if you have some reeds. So another great adaptation that natural camouflage are going to have. Anything else? You might notice Stripe has this beak here. That helps, of course, with eating. Turtles don't have teeth, but they have this sharp beak they can use for cutting roots and cutting through different foods they like to eat. Sometimes breaking open eggs. They like to eat eggs occasionally. All right. Anything else we might see about the turtle? I don't know if you can see this, but he is peeing all over the place right now, which would be a very good defense mechanism if I was a predator. I wouldn't want a turtle to pee all over me.
Everybody does it.
Everyone does it. True. All right. You might also notice Stripe has this very pretty eye here. Yeah. Oh, no, he's still peeing. Okay. So turtles, box turtles typically have brown or red eyes. Males almost always have red eyes. Ural is a male. You can see he has a red eye here. Females tend to have brown eyes. Of course, we do get exceptions with that, but I'd say it's true about 80% of the time. Another neat thing about turtles is if you count the lines on each section of their shell, you can get a rough idea of how old they are. It's kind of hard to see on the camera here, but each one of these shell segments, which is called a scoot, is going to have lines on it, kind of like a tree would. So we can tell that Yertle here is about 20 years old. Now, it's not exact, but it'll give you a rough idea of their age. All right. Any other questions about Yertle here?
So, Mr. Chance, will we
Yes.
see turtles in the winter?
No, typically we won't see turtles in the winter. Good question, Miss Bethany.
Thank you.
So turtles, they don't actually hibernate. They do something called brumination. So it's like hibernation. Well, they'll burrow into the ground, typically about 7 inches to a foot deep. And they stay under there like a hibernating animal would. But since they're cold-blooded, they like to come out on warm days. So even in those warm days in the winter, they'll wake up, come out and stretch their legs, get some sunlight, maybe eat some food if they can find it, and then they'll burrow themselves back in. So it's like hibernation, but they still wake up a few times in the middle of the winter get a little snack, get some sunlight, warm up, and then go back to sleep for a few more months. All right. Anything else?
I don't think so. Do any of our students or teachers have questions?
All right. And pop those in the chat if you do. Why is he so small? Good question, Jace. So he's actually not that small for an ornate box turtle. I would say Yertle here is full grown. They can get a little bit bigger than this, maybe an inch or two longer this way. But that's about as big as these guys will get. Of course, there are turtles that are bigger than this, different species, all the way up to the giant tortoises we see in the Galapagos that are several hundred pounds. But this guy is pretty maxed out. Kind of yellow, that's just the color they get. You'll see different parts of their design or pattern will be yellowish. That's just going to help them blend in with some of the grasses they live near, because they tend to live in the grasslands. All right. Any other questions?
Hi, Jess. I also saw that they asked, what type of water can it swim in?
Oh, so these guys don't actually swim. You can find them near water sometimes, but they won't really swim. As you saw, they have claws. They don't really have webbed feet like our red-eared sliders might, that you'll see at Tingley Beach. So yeah, these guys don't really swim. They'll go near the water. Sometimes they'll hunt for worms or different bugs near the water, or might go into the water a little bit, but you're not going to see box turtles swimming around at all. All right. So the shell, how hard does it get? I don't really know how to answer that. I would say that it's made from the same material as your fingernails. So it's pretty sturdy, but you don't really want to tap their shell to test it out. Their spine, if you see this line right here, down its back, that's where his spine is. They're fully built into their shell, so they can feel every little tap, every movement, every scratch on it. We do have some turtles who like to have their shell scratched. It feels good. Yeah, but they are fully part of that shell, so they do feel everything. It is a pretty sturdy shell. It's good protection, but I wouldn't try to test it out. And these guys they live to about 35 years in captivity. Typically not quite as old in the wild, but 35 to 40 years is the high end for box turtles. All right. Any other questions? If not, I will throw it back to Bethany.
Okay, not the turtle.
Oh, not the turtle. Right, the program. Yes.
Okay. Thank
Turtles
you,
do not fly. All right.
Okay, everybody. So we hope you enjoyed meeting our ambassador turtle, Mr. Yertle here. So we are going to go on grounds and meet with one of our animals. Mr. Chaz was talking about how Yertle is not a very good swimmer and does not do well in the cold. The animals that we are going to be meeting with are excellent swimmers and do very well in the cold. That's actually where they live. So during this portion, Allie, I'm going to ask you to relay those questions to me. So I'm going to be presenting my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and pick that up real quick. Let's see here. Okay. Present your entire screen. Here we go. Okay, here. And I'm going to go ahead. Allie, can you give me a verbal confirmation you guys can see those penguins?
We can see the penguins.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So everybody, we are inside our penguin chill habitat here at the BioPark. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see some of our penguins. So we have 3 different penguin species here at the Albuquerque BioPark. Our larger ones that you can see right here, these are our king penguins. And here at the BioPark, we have what we call a bachelor group, which means that our king penguins are all boys. And so they are enjoying hanging out together, being good buds. But we have all male penguins, so we're not going to be seeing any little baby king penguins or any breeding with them. And then over here, these penguins right here, they have those yellow crest of feathers on their head. Those are called macaroni penguins. Now, they're not called macaroni because they're yellow like the pasta, macaroni and cheese. They get that name. If anybody knows the song like Yankee Doodle, you know, Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni because apparently feathers in your hat are called macaroni, and that was a very fashionable trend at the time these penguins were discovered. And so the individuals who discovered them thought that they looked like they had feathers in their heads, which they do. They're covered in feathers, but kind of like that style macaroni. So that's how they received that name. And we see mostly macaroni penguins up here with our king penguins. In fact, I believe this is all macaroni and king. So I'm going to span out because we have one more species. I'm going to see if we can identify. And here it is. So this guy here, this one, this one, this one, all of these smaller penguins are called gentoo penguins. And so gentoo are actually the most common penguin that we have here at the Albuquerque BioPark. So in total, we have about 30 different penguins that live here on grounds at the zoo. So I'm going to zoom out again. So you can see them swimming, you can see them diving. We have some penguins over here that are preening, but I want you guys just to take a moment to look and see if you notice any adaptations, something that might help our penguins survive. I'm going to have our teachers put those in the chat box, and I'm going to ask Miss Allie to read those out for us as they come in. So something that might help a penguin survive.
We have skin,
Mm-hmm.
color,
Yeah. Color, excellent.
height, feet,
Mm-hmm.
feathers, ability to swim. We have
Mhm.
beak.
Yeah, so let's break some of those ideas that you guys just put out down together, right? So when we're talking about an animal and things they need to survive, one of the basic things we need to survive is food, right? We have to eat a lot of food. For us, we usually eat about 5 times a day, right? We have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then we usually have at least a morning and an afternoon snack. At least I do. I don't know about everybody else. But our penguins, because they live in such cold temperatures, their body is constantly going through their food. And so these guys eat a lot. And they're going to predominantly be eating here at the biopark different kinds of fish. So when we mention those adaptations, the ability to swim, right? That's something they're going to need if they're going to be eating fish. And those beaks, that's something that helps them catch the fish and gobble them down. And so with our lion skull, we had talked about how lions have sharp teeth to rip and tear. Penguins don't have any teeth because they have beaks. And so instead of ripping or tearing, they're going to be mostly swallowing whole their fish that they get. They might tear it into chunks, but usually they'll just kind of swallow them. And our penguins have different shaped beaks. So we're a little far away, but if we look here, our king penguin, they say we have a long, narrow beak right here. And our macaroni penguins right here, they have shorter beaks, as do our gentoo. So they're going to be eating different kinds of fish. Now, another adaptation someone mentioned was color. And does anybody know the word that we use as scientists to describe animals that have a specific color that help them blend into a habitat? What is it called when an animal's body helps them blend into their habitat or their home?
We had someone say camouflage.
Nice. Yeah. So that is camouflage. And when we look at our penguins, they look like they're wearing tuxedos, right? They got the white in the front, the black on the back. And most people at first glance, they stand out pretty nicely here in our habitat, but they have a very special kind of camouflage. So they have what we call counter shading, which means that if you look at them from below, those white bellies, if you're in the water and you look up at a penguin, those white bellies are going to blend in with the sky or the sunlight. Or if you're a predator and you're looking from them from above, you're going to see those black backs, which means those black backs are going to help them blend into the dark waters they're swimming in. Now, right now at the biopark, we can see them just fine in the water, partially because our water isn't very deep, and also it's cleaned regularly. So there's no sorts of debris or sand or anything floating around in it that we might find in the oceans. But yeah, those were some excellent adaptations. Someone else mentioned feathers, and penguins are birds. So they do have feathers, and they have feathers that cover their entire body, head to tail. The only exception is their beak, their eyes, right? They do have feathers on their eyelids, and their feet. And so those feet are nice and webbed. Again, an adaptation to help them swim. So those feathers keep our penguins very, very warm. Occasionally, though, just like your dog or your cat at home might shed some fur, penguins will shed their feathers. And this is called molting. And it's something that happens on a cyclical basis, which means, as the seasons change, occasionally they might molt their feathers. And they look kind of ugly when that happens. We try not to let them know because it might hurt their feelings. But they'll be losing their feathers kind of like in a patchy clump, or you might see like a big jumble of feathers sticking out from one side of their body as they're molting. And then they will regrow those feathers. And our penguins' feathers are really important. We can see we have all adult penguins here, and they're very adept at swimming through the water. If we had a baby penguin, they might have downy feathers. And all of our baby birds are going to first start having downy feathers, which means they're very fluffy, very light feathers. And that's for a couple of reasons. They're the feathers that develop closest to our bodies because those are going to help keep us warm. But also, baby birds aren't very good at flying, right? And so as they get older, they'll develop, if they're a flighted bird, like an owl or an eagle, they might have some flight feathers that will develop to help them get off the ground. Now, for penguins, what this means is baby penguins can't get wet because their downy feathers, if they get wet, they'll sink down a little bit. It weighs them down a lot. It takes longer for them to dry. So as they get older, they'll develop more and more of those slick feathers that we see covering all of these penguins, and they're covered in like an oil. And if we've ever tried mixing oil and water, right, they don't mix very well. And so a lot of our aquatic mammals or birds or animals that are going to be living in and around water will have some oil on their fur or feathers, and that will help them dry off. So another adaptation. So you guys have done such a good job with identifying our adaptations, things that help our animals survive. Does anybody have any questions about our penguins? I'll go over here and check out our Gentoo. If you have questions, we can just put those in the chat.
Oh, we have a question. Are there any emperor penguins?
So emperor penguins do exist. There are emperor penguins. There are not emperor penguins at the Albuquerque BioPark. And so we have these three very specific breeds of penguins for a couple of reasons. One of which is that these guys all live well together and their habitat. So this is what we call a mixed species habitat. See our Gentoo diving in the water there. Another reason is that these guys, our Gentoo and our Macaroni penguins, have a breeding recommendation. which means that because of their endangered species status, it is recommended that these guys have babies. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't have emperor penguins here, is we wanted to focus on these species. So I'm going to zoom out and come over here. So you might have noticed we have these tires here in their habitat, and these actually are serving a purpose. So we can see our 2 macaroni penguins sitting on this tire. So when we put the tires in, they were empty, and the penguins came and filled them with rocks. And so penguins' nests are made out of rocks because that's predominantly what they can find in their habitats in the wild. And so we're seeing that these 3 tires, and there's a 4th one off to the side we can't see right now, have been filled with rocks, and we have seen some nesting activity. So we're hoping that we might have some penguins lay eggs this year, and if we're successful, maybe even having a penguin chick, which would be really cute, but also really wonderful for the survival of this animal. Yeah, excellent question. Are there any other questions about our penguins here at the Albuquerque BioPark?
Are there any penguins that are not black and white?
You know, there are some penguins that have more of a gray color. There are penguins in Australia called little blue penguins. I'm not sure why they called them blue. They're definitely gray. But pretty much most penguins, if not all penguins, have the same similar coloration, right? They're all going to have the dark back and the white belly, and that's going to help them with that counter shading camouflage we talked about. You'll see, right, we talked about how our macaroni penguins have those yellow feathers at the top. You can see our king penguins have this yellow spot on their chest. What's really cute is we have penguins called chin strap penguins because it looks like they have a little black line or chin strap going across the bottom of their face. But generally speaking, most penguins are going to be the same type of coloring. There will be some variations, but they're going to look like they're all in tuxedos.
Are there any penguins that don't swim?
All penguins swim. Baby penguins, like we talked about, they're not very good at swimming, but they quickly learn how. But all of our penguins are going to be living in and along coastal areas. And so these guys can be found in South America and Antarctica. We do not find any penguins in the entire world in the northern hemisphere. They're all in the southern hemisphere. But all of our penguins can swim, and that's mostly because penguins eat fish. And so that's how they're able to get their food, is by being able to swim. And penguins, well, they're birds, they have solid bones like ours. So birds that can fly, like cardinals, they have hollow bones, and that helps them to not be as heavy. But if you have a solid bone, right, like a penguin or an ostrich, you're not going to be able to fly. And instead, penguins like to swim and ostrich like to run.
Is there a leader penguin?
Is there a leader penguin? That's a good question. So in a lot of animals that live together in groups, you will have a leader. Like with our lions that we talked about, you'll have a male who's in charge of the pride or the group of lions. With penguins, you do have penguins that are stronger than other penguins, which means they're more likely to be healthier, but they don't really have a leader in their hierarchy or their social structure. They will pair off, though, into separate families. And so some penguins, they don't necessarily find a mate, which can be a little sad for them. But as far as one penguin telling the others what to do, there's not a single penguin that's in charge. Good question.
Are baby penguins always born in eggs?
Yes. So penguins, because they are birds, they do lay eggs. And so depending on the species of penguins, their nest might look a little differently. Or if anybody has seen, well, I'm dating myself now, but the March of the Penguins, right? I don't know if you guys have seen that, but the emperor penguins will carry their eggs on their feet to keep them by their bodies and keep them warm. So these guys will lay their eggs in their nests and they'll sit on them or with them. And so all of our baby penguins do come from eggs. Mm-hmm.
Do they eat salmon and do they have allergies?
You know, animals are kind of funny, especially in captivity, because if you had a penguin that was allergic to fish, they just wouldn't survive in the wild, right? And we just would never know that it had happened. But sometimes when we have animals in captivity, like here at zoos and aquariums, we find some animals do have weird allergies. Now, our penguins that I know of do not have any allergies, but I have a friend who works with a tamandua, which is a type of anteater, and their tamandua is allergic to ants. So they had to find an alternative food source for her. So it can happen, but with our penguin group, not that I know of.
How long do they live?
So penguins as birds, they're going to live, isn't it about 12 to 15 years, Chaz?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, it's about 12 to 15 years. Mm-hmm.
And we also have, do they ever get sick? If so, with what?
Yeah, so penguins can get sick just like anybody else. And just like we have common colds and things like that, there are things that can happen with birds, you know. But these guys, because they are predators, they're also prey. So when they get sick, they do a really good job of hiding it because they don't want their predators to know that they're sick. They don't want to look weak. And it can be really challenging caring for birds, especially because they'll act like normal until they suddenly can't do it anymore. And then you come in one day and they're very, very sick. So when our penguins get sick here at the biopark, we do have a veterinary care team that takes care of them. And we have holding areas in the back where they can be by themselves and they can rest and relax. They do have a swimming area back there if they want to, but it's just a way for them to have some private time. And Mr. Chaz was just telling me that they can get salmonella.
Avian flu.
Mm-hmm. Or avian flu. So just like we have illnesses, penguins can have illnesses too. But they are not really susceptible to COVID, which is helpful. So, any other questions?
I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead then, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So we'll do this. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay.
Thank you so much, Miss Bethany and Chaz, for those awesome looks into those amazing animals. And Macaroni Penguin is amazing.
Yes. And thank you guys so much for visiting with us today and learning about our animal adaptations. So I would encourage you, as you look in the mirror, see what adaptations you have for survival.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, look, we're getting a round of applause. Very nice.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if you guys are interested in doing more virtual programs with us, your teachers can just reach out to us and let us know, and we can do one with just your class.
Yeah.
So
That'd be awesome.
yeah, we'd love to.
It's
Okay,
really
everybody.
awesome.
Well, we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Miss Allie, and she's going to tell us what to do next.
So we had just finished our presentation and we did our Q&A. I put in our link a feedback link for our teachers to go ahead and do if they have any requests for next time or amazing comments for awesome presenters. Anything that you want to put in the feedback link is amazing. And just again, I just want to say thank you so much for the ABQ BioPark for giving us that awesome presentation.
Yeah, happy to do it. Okay, everybody. Well, we'll see you all later. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Real quick, Jennifer Nilvo, I'm so sorry. How many students do you have in your classroom?
I have 20 in my classroom.
20? That's awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. I meant to ask earlier and I completely forgot.
No, that's okay. And I know it like helps you guys with your counts and how many you like reach out to and stuff. So yeah.
That's perfect. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I liked it last year. I did it with my class when we were virtual and we were, you know, in that pandemic. And when I saw it come out this year, I was like, yes, I signed up for a bunch of things for the next 2 weeks.
Perfect. Well, we're very happy to have you. Have a good day.
Perfect. You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.